Okay, let's dive right in. We live in a world where a single data breach can cost a company millions, right? So securing your organization's data has gone from being a good idea to an absolutely mission-critical priority. Let's break down exactly why. Welcome. So this is the first part of our new four-part series. We're going to be digging into a fantastic report from Virtualization Options LLC on some amazing encryption tools. But first things first, we've got to start with the big question. In our hyper-connected world, why does encryption matter more now than, well, ever before? I mean, it's the question that should be on every leader's mind. Because the threat landscape out there, it's not just evolving, it's a sophisticated, relentless campaign that is targeting your single most valuable asset, your information. To really get a handle on the urgency here, let's start by looking at the rising tide of threats. This is what makes leaving your data unencrypted such a massive, massive liability today. And this right here, this is what's really striking. Check out the scale of the problem. Over 70%, 70, of all data breaches involve data that was just sitting there, stored away. That's a staggering figure, and believe me, it is on the rise. This slide really captures what you could call a perfect storm for organizations. On one side, you've got smarter, more aggressive attacks like ransomware and even threats from the inside. On the other, regulators are hitting companies with huge, multi-million-dollar fines. So what does that do? It forces attackers to look for the path of least resistance, and that's often your stored files. Okay, so when we're talking about all this vulnerable data, what are we actually trying to protect? Let's go ahead and define the digital battlefield. You know, it sounds technical, but it's super simple. Data at rest is just all the information that's sitting on your systems and not actively zipping across a network. And because it's just sitting there stationary, it becomes a prime target for theft and, of course, unauthorized access. Just think about it for a second. We're talking about the countless files sitting on every single laptop, every desktop, and every server across your entire organization. All of that is data at rest. And it's also all that critical stuff, right? Your customer information, your financial records, all that valuable operational data that's tucked away in your databases. That's right. This is a big one people forget. Even the files you've synced up to Google Drive or Dropbox or OneDrive, that's all considered data at rest. It's just sitting on a server somewhere, totally vulnerable if that server ever gets compromised. So the really crucial point here is that this kind of data faces a whole unique set of threats. We're talking about things that your network security alone just can't stop, like a stolen laptop, right? Or a lost backup drive, or a compromised cloud account where a bad guy can just sit patiently and work to get at your files. Now, let's talk about the real-world consequences. Because the impact of a breach, it isn't just some technical inconvenience. It's a potentially catastrophic business event. In one documented case, a single breach that involves stolen and unencrypted backup tapes cost a Fortune 500 company a staggering $150 million. That's in fines, lawsuits, and cleanup. Okay, so maybe that's an extreme example, but the average is still pretty shocking. According to IBM's latest report, the global average cost of a data breach has now hit $4.45 million. That's the average. And what about your customers? You know, the people who keep you in business? How do they react? A full 87% say they will take their business somewhere else after an organization has a data breach. They just walk. And this quote just hits the nail on the head. The direct financial hit, that's often just the start of the pain. The long-term damage to your brand's reputation and that customer trust you lose, it can be permanent. And frankly, you can't even put a price on it. Okay, we've seen the problem, we've seen the devastating costs, so now let's explore the solution. A really powerful foundational defense that acts as the last line of protection for your data. At its core, it's really this simple. Encryption is a digital lock. It's a process that basically scrambles your data, making it completely unintelligible and totally unusable to anyone who doesn't have the correct key. So how does that lock actually work? Well, it's basically a three-step dance. First, it takes your readable data and turns it into a scrambled, unreadable gobbledygook called ciphertext. Second, it puts a key in charge, meaning only the correct key can unscramble it. And third, all this gives you comprehensive protection for your privacy, your intellectual property, and it helps you stay compliant with regulations. And look, we are not talking about some flimsy padlock you'd buy at a hardware store. Modern encryption standards like AES 256 are so ridiculously robust that they're used to protect top-secret government information. It's considered impossible to break with any current technology. It is the gold standard for a reason.
Ultimately, this is the most important thing to get your head around. When you do it right, encryption fundamentally changes what your data is. It transforms it from this vulnerable liability that keeps you up at night into a secure, protected asset.
So, we've now established the urgent why behind encrypting your data at rest, and that sets the stage perfectly for our next explainer, where we're going to dive into the how. We'll explore the powerful open-source tools that can make this protection a reality for any organization. We'll see you there.